Welcome back to Brashonomics. I'm Ben Brash, and joined by Michael Busacca, broker with Skyline Properties. First of all, Michael, how are you, buddy?
Pretty darn good. I will say my hearing has been beat down a little bit. I saw Soundgarden at the Paramount last Friday, and they are in fine form, but they are a loud band.
Well, Corey was just talking about why people come to Seattle, and it used to be people still associate Seattle with Nirvana, Soundgarden, the grunge.
Yeah, it was nice to see that we still have, our own special bands still around and still in top form.
Yeah, now we got Macklemore.
Yeah, that's not my flavor, but to each their own.
Yeah, hey, there's a thrift shop that you don't have to go to. Somebody will buy your stuff instead of you buying theirs. Michael, we talked a little bit about coming to Seattle, and a lot of people know it. Well, people know it rains, and part of raining or part of the overcast doesn't necessarily lend itself to solar, is what most people think. Is that true? I mean, you talked a little bit about, before you came on, the desire for people to actually have solar panels on their home in Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, I can't blame anyone who is a Northwest native for thinking, oh, solar, that's a joke. And then they look outside, it's February, it's totally overcast, and they think I'm nuts. But the difference is from late spring through early fall, with our longer days, we actually get quite a bit of catch-up time. And we actually have 70% of the light exposure that Los Angeles has. Most of us would think we have about 10% of the light exposure of L.A. Another critical...
Is that because of the smog?
No, I was playing on how dark and gloomy it is here usually. But I like this.
You go into L.A. some days, it's pretty dark and gloomy, even though the sun is out, but, nonetheless.
Yeah, no, I'll take our air versus theirs any day.
So what kind of triggered your interest then in solar? I mean, was it being in L.A.? Was it here? What's it?
Two things primarily. First and foremost, I grew up in a house where my parents had put solar panels up. Now, these were not the photovoltaic variety. They did not generate electricity, but they heated the water for our house. And I grew up out on the Olympic Peninsula where it's very cloudy and much rainier than even King County by far. Mm-hmm. And yet we still had highly cost-effective solar. The second thing, and this really made me realize, okay, something needs to be done. You remember in 2001 they had the rolling blackouts in California? Mm-hmm. I thought, California has so much sun exposure, and those people at the time had so much equity in their homes. If 10% of those people had gone out, borrowed against their equity, and put up solar, they could have dented Enron's effect on their energy prices. So I was completely underwhelmed with all these bright, wealthy people in California not getting off their backsides and doing something about it. So those experiences triggered my desire to learn more about solar. And then in learning more, I found out, hey, in the Northwest, we can do this.
I think it's interesting just to know you can do that here and that it's possible. I mean, you talked about people catching up during the longer months, I guess the longer days of months. What is it that, can it store the energy from, say, June into December? Is that how it works, or is that how you're able to play this catch-up?
Part of the catch-up is if you're tied into the electrical grid. Now, you can have a completely independent home system that's not tied in, or if you have a system that's tied in the grid, the solar or the electric companies, power companies, will give you credits back. So the statistic I have is 15 cents per kilowatt hour is the credit. And if you have upgrades to the system, you can get it up to 24 cents a kilowatt hour.
So you can actually sell your electricity to the electric company?
Yeah, funny enough.
In some ways?
Yeah, it's, for me,
that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I want to send them a bill.
We all dream about that. Imagine if we were able to fuel our cars that way, to actually be able to take it back to the oil companies. But we can't. So home electricity and power is the only way we can take it back to the big boys and girls who hit all of us consumers so hard.
Mm-hmm. So, with solar, I know a lot of things here are actually hydroelectric, right? I mean, we have the big dams, and a lot of our energy comes from hydroelectric. Is there a big difference, I guess, in between the two? Not necessarily how they are created, but I guess how would you compare them?
The one big difference is, and I take a lot of pride in the fact in the Northwest we have the hydro, so we have some of the most effective power production that does not hammer the climate and hammer the environment. But the main thing is with having a home system is now you start to attain energy independence, as opposed to all of us being consumers who are victimized by the power companies. Now we can fight back and control those costs.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main difference.
And so really it starts to give people an option. I mean, it's kind of what you're saying.
Exactly. I mean, who wouldn't want to be able to control their costs and manage that? And you think about it with electrical or solar systems, I mean, they have very few moving parts. They would have no moving parts if you didn't have hot water, if you didn't have water pumping through your house. So the maintenance is very low. The main hit is just installing it.
Mm-hmm. And so what are are there big incentives for people to do this? Because it sounds to me a little bit like a no-brainer. You put some solar panels up, which are going to have an upfront cost, but you end up saving a lot of money over time, which essentially will help it pay for itself. Are there other incentives to, get people moving on this?
Absolutely. There's state and federal incentives. So the federal incentives do run out, I believe it's June 30th of 2014, but very much you want to go online and just Google, federal incentives for solar and state incentives. And there are also, even at the county level, there are loans available to put a solar package up. Snohomish County has a loan as low as 2.9% to put solar up. So when you run all the numbers there, you realize, okay, this is cost effective. Mm-hmm. And it would be even without the incentives, but with the incentives in place, now's the time to do it.
Do people tend to, and I know you come from obviously working in real estate, Michael, do people tend to look for this type of home? I mean, if you're going to put the money in, whether it's through a loan or, you do it because it's you have an incentive from the federal government or the state government, you realize there's not a lot of moving parts, so they're low maintenance. Is it something that is desirable? I mean, do you talk to people or clients who say, I really want a house with solar?
It currently is not desirable because, as I mentioned, and as most would conclude, how could it possibly be cost effective? Mm-hmm. So that's what one of the things I want to do is put out to homeowners or people who intend to own a home. If you're going to own a home for, say, longer than 5 years, just in a generic average, at that point it really does start to become cost effective. And if you found your second home or your ultimate home where you might spend 15 to 20 years, it will really pay dividends. Run the numbers even 10 years, and you'll be amazed how much farther ahead you are economically.
Yeah. How long does it take to install one of these systems? I mean, is it just you're talking about putting it on your roof, really, right?
Yeah, I mean, and keep in mind, these systems are modular. You don't have to go whole hog. You don't have to get a roof full of panels and get 12 panels. You could get 2 panels. And the bracketing and all the systems are very straightforward. The installations are dialed in. You do need to get battery packs and some other electronic infrastructure. But the bottom line is you should be able to have a system installed in less than a week. Critical detail, though, as I mentioned on prior shows, you got to keep the water out and make sure that any anchoring to your roof, when it punctures that roof membrane, make sure that it's sealed well.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I was just going to ask you, so, I mean, in some ways, now you have a new panel on your roof. I was going to ask, how does that affect your roof? I mean, does it extend almost the life of it because the water isn't pounding it every day?
You nailed it. Absolutely extends the life of a comp shingle roof. Ultraviolet light is the number one thing that degrades comp shingle roofs. So if you even just had a tree shading your roof, your 30-year roof could go out to 35 or 40 years. And definitely having an array of photovoltaic cells absolutely will knock down the UV.
And that, I mean, I guess that would save money also because, roofs are always getting replaced.
That's a great angle. I'm actually going to steal that point from you.
That's why I'm here, Michael. Michael Busacca joins us. Michael, we just have a couple minutes left before we have to go to break. When somebody goes, coming from the real estate side, if you're driving down the street and you're with a buyer and they see solar panels on a house, what goes through their head? I mean, because they're not common enough, I don't think, where you think that's kind of pretty or cool. Sometimes they look a little bulky. How do you help people mitigate that?
I have to show them, data online, and absolutely, you're wondering about what people think. People think it's a gimmick. They think it's a novelty. They don't think it's economically viable. But here's the number one statistic to carry going forward. The whole country of Germany, almost all of it lies at higher latitudes than the Puget Sound region. Yet they generate 50% of the solar energy produced on Earth. And they're that far north, and they're cloudy and rainy too. So there you go. That's why it's viable.
German engineers.
But, in the Puget Sound region, we take a lot of pride, and we create, some of the most advanced technology anywhere. And you know what it is, aerospace, biotech, software. So it would be great as a region if we became a leader in this. And then I've always hoped that we could lord it over the Southwest. Say, hey, Nevada, Arizona, California, why don't you have all this solar?
Yeah.
We can get it up here.
Well, it seems like, we do have to go to break, but it seems like down in Arizona, at least the power companies are starting to do it, where they have those huge solar fields. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting this energy gift from the sky. Why not capitalize on it?
Nothing like energy gifts from the sky that you can then sell to the power company.
Exactly.
Michael, thanks so much for joining us. We do have to go to break. When we come back, people who are looking to buy a house, or even one with or without solar panels, I guess, are going to be running into mortgages. And, of course, mortgages come with loans. And, of course, the biggest factor in a loan is credit. Find out in just a few minutes what credit has to do with you. We'll be right back.